welcome to the 100 subscriber special, the top 10 underappreciated manga by me and Blaze. So what we're going to do is we're going to each take turns picking one of our top, the 10 series that we think are underappreciated. They're not going to be in any order. So our number one is not our most underappreciated. We're just going to do it nice and steady, just 10 each. If there's any that you think are underappreciated, you can let us know in the comments below. And if not, just enjoy, and hopefully a couple of these series here will be ones that you will eventually enjoy and come to like. If not, you can message in the comment below and tell us what you don't like about them. We'll get a nice little discussion going, so onwards we go.
Hello there, my name is Blaze. I normally do Souls-like games on this channel. I also have 10 manga that I think are underappreciated. Now, unlike Brad, I haven't read nowhere near as much manga as him. Most of the ones I've read are the popular ones or isekai trash just because it's easy, which I won't recommend. So you may have better picks than me, but feel free to let me know. Now, I've listed my manga in no specific order, so let's get on with the first one.
So, in at number 10, we have... So my number 10 is Ratman from the superhero genre. It's only 60 chapters. It's nice and easy to finish. It's a superhero style where the main character is bullied, similar to My Hero Academia, and he gets a super suit, which he is asked to be given. He's like, oh my god, great, it's going to be really cool. I'm going to be a real cool superhero. And it turns out she gave him a villain suit and he has to side with the villains. It's actually really interesting. It's nice and quick. I do recommend watching it. Well, reading it. Watching it. So I class it as a hidden gem. It's quite nice. It's fairly simple. It's got a couple of twists that you'd expect the twists to be. But its fight scenes are really interesting. And how their superpower system works. I think it's quite nice. So I do recommend reading Ratman.
First manga that I think is underappreciated is Siren. Now, admittedly, Siren was in Shonen Jump, which for some people would normally make it not applicable for this video, which I counter, good sir, with that it was cancelled, which is crazy as it was arguably one of the best series in Shonen Jump at the time, in my opinion. The series had a good plot, it had good art, likeable characters, and it felt different to quite a few series of the time. Made even worse that the author's mech's work was also cancelled within a few chapters. The one saving grace we have with Siren is the author was given a few months to wrap it up, so it has got an ending, although it is a bit rushed. I'd still recommend giving it a read. The series is about hopping between the past and future in hopes of changing it for the better, while developing even more powerful psychic powers.
In the number 9 slot, we have... The next series that I have on my list is Rosario Vampire. I was reading it as it was ongoing in Shonen Jump. It starts off as a classic harem romance series, and it keeps introducing more ladies for the main character to potentially get with. But over time, like similar to Negima, it goes into stereotypical cool-ass battle shonen. So... what else have we got here? It's 107 chapters altogether. It's split into 2 cores, Rosario Vampire 1 and the core being number 2. Each character, I think, is good enough to win at the end because they're all fairly well-written characters. It did originally have an anime adaptation, but it was absolutely terrible. Season 1 of that adaptation cut out a lot of things, like how the main character actually does things. Because in the manga... Sugune, the main character, actually fights, but they cut that out in the anime adaptation just to have more fan service, negating all of his character development. But I do recommend reading it. It's a good read.
My next manga is Kurakami, the Black Swindler, which we covered in our 5-chapter rule series. Link is in the description. Now in Japan, this series is greatly appreciated. It has multiple sequels, multiple live-action TV series, and even has a film adaptation. But unfortunately, due to the lack of a translation, this series sees no love outside of Japan. Due to the complex nature of this manga, a translator would need to be both fluent in Japanese and have a great deal of knowledge on the subject matter. Because of this, only 3/4 of the original series is translated online, and that translator quit. For those who are curious what the series is about, the series follows Kurakami, whose family is destroyed by a swindler, and he vows to take revenge on said swindler. While trying to find out who this individual is, he goes around helping other people who've been scammed by swindlers, and he goes and scams them back to get these people's money back. The series goes into absolutely crazy level of detail about how the scam works, how Kurakami uses their own tricks against him to scam them back. The author has clearly done his research. I highly recommend either checking this manga out or looking up the TV series online, as it does have English subtitles.
In at number 8, what do we have? So my next manga is Bakuman by the creator of Death Note. It's even got a reference in chapter 1, which is kind of fun. It's the manga of how to make manga, basically the manga of Shonen Jump, which tells you how things are done, how surveys are done, how series are edited by when they get the editors in, and all the people surrounding that. Introduces the main character and his dream of making a manga that his crush can play the main heroine, and it goes through all the trials and tribulations of him making series, going from like weekly series to monthly series. It's actually really interesting. If you ever want to know how a series is made, then Bakuman's for you.
Now, before I say what the next manga is, hear me out and let me explain. It's Pokemon Adventures. And I know what you're thinking. How could anything Pokemon related be considered underappreciated? Well, how often do you hear about the original Pokemon manga? Outside a rare comment about how it was a bit darker than the games or the show, many Pokemon fans don't know about it. And ones that do only know about that scene where Arbok gets cut in half. Which I think is a bit of a shame, as this manga is quite enjoyable, especially if you want the less kid-friendly version of Pokemon. The original series is only 7 volumes long, so why not give it a try? You can't really go wrong with it.
So, in at number 7. So next up on the list is Kurakami, or Black God. I put this on here even though it's technically a manhwa, because when it first came out, when I was going through it and getting volume by volume over time, I didn't know what a difference between a manga and a manhwa was. So that's currently the only manhwa on the list. It's 115 chapters. Its art style is really nice. It's about the main character who falls into a secret, basically like a secret world, where every person on Earth has 2 extra doppelgangers, including themselves, to make 3 people. And he meets Kuro right at the beginning, who is a keeper of the balance known as the coexistence equilibrium. And it's their adventures, because in chapter 1, he is killed by someone, and he wakes up in his apartment to find the arm that he lost is reattached, and then he is linked to the lady Kuro, and it's the adventures that he has trying to keep the equilibrium with everybody, and it's a real good series, so I do recommend this one.
My 4th manga is Defense Devil. Sadly, this is a manga you never really hear about. So much so that I'd completely forgotten about it until we started planning out this video, which is just crazy. This series is about a devil who acts as a lawyer, trying to prove the innocence of people who have died so they don't have to go to hell. It has a pretty unique plot, and it is very interesting. coupled with likable characters and nice fight scenes, makes this a series that I can easily recommend. If you're sick of the same isekai trash and want something different to read, I highly recommend you pick it up.
Number 6. So for my next one, I chose an older series that lots of people will never have read. I chose The Law of Ofeki. It follows Ofeki, the titular character, who is chosen by one of the gods to participate in a tournament, and each one of the chosen are given a specific skill. His skill is the ability to turn trash into trees, and then it's one of my favourite power systems. I've got a lot of stuff sorted in this sort of power system bit because I create my own for certain things as well. And then for later on, they can also do an increased version of that skill, like trash to trees, beads to bombs, and then they can towels to steel, and then his upgraded form is steel to magnetism and stuff like that. So it's in the tournament, anytime that they injure a bystander, they lose a skill, an innate skill like the power to run, the power to read fast, and every time they defeat an enemy, they gain a skill. So, and it is the winner of the tournament. Basically, that god gets chosen to become a higher god, and then, for example, if Ueki wins, he gets to pick any skill, and he'll be granted that skill. So I do appreciate this one, so I thought I'd recommend it as my older series.
Number 6. Library Wars. Love and War. When it comes to fiction, I've never had really any interest in romance stories. In fact, I normally avoid them completely. So I was surprised when I picked up Library Wars, and I quite enjoyed it. Although it does have a quite common dynamic between the two main characters that you normally see in shoujo, the characters are likable enough that it doesn't really matter. A major factor to why I like this series is that the romance isn't the only plot of the story. The story is about the armed conflict between the library forces and the censorship forces. It's an interesting one, and it still has a bit of relevance to this day. Especially when it comes down to how quickly people are to use violence because they don't like something. If you want a fairly innocent love story with a bit of spice thrown in there, give this undernooked manga a whirl.
Number 5. So my next one is a series called Kandim. It was back when I was reading absolutely anything at any point, where I just keep clicking through random until I found something interesting. And this was one of the first ones that I found of the genre of people turning into weapons. It's similar to Soul Eater in a way, where the main character stumbles into a secret world where they're fighting over people who can turn into weapons. The problem with this series, though, unfortunately, is it did get cancelled halfway through a major arc, but I still think it's interesting enough from what is shown that I can recommend this one.
Until Death Do Us Part. This is one of the series that I picked up purely based off the premise, and I'm glad I did. The series follows a blind swordsman who uses a sci-fi sword with a micro edge, allowing it to cut through pretty much anything. Our swordsman is trying to protect a teenager who has prerogative abilities, I'm terrible at pronunciation, I apologise, abilities from those who want to use her powers to gain power, which is a bit redundant there. The series has good action and is quite interesting. I haven't seen many modern day swordsman manga outside the school setting. This is one of those mangas that I think could do quite well as an anime. It is a shame that many people overlook this series. So, once again, I recommend it.
Number 4. So the next one I've got for you is TwinStar Exorcist, my current favourite Shonen Jump series. It's still ongoing. It's a good series with the mechanics and power systems of spiritual power. There was an anime of this show, but of this series, but it's not very good, to be fair. So if anything, I would suggest you read the manga. It's a lot better. So the series starts off with the main female protagonist trying to save someone from demons. Turns out that the main character just happens to be there as well. He assists in defeating the demons. And then later on you find out why he decided to quit fighting demons, because he immediately leaves after fighting them, and she's really surprised considering how powerful he is, and he's not actually doing anything about it. So you have to learn about the particular traumas he has and his backstory, and then it gets into the actual story, which is, according to a prophecy, they're destined to be together, and their child is supposed to be the most powerful child in the world who will bring about the death of all evil. But then it's after that, it's their relationship and how they must improve themselves to fight the evil that's currently there, and how the evil doesn't want to be destroyed and will try to defeat them themselves. And then you've got lots of heel face turns and some really cool stuff. So it is a series I do recommend.
And for this one, I have Akumetsu, a manga about a group of young men going around killing corrupt politicians and businessmen. This manga was written in a time when Japan was massively in debt and people were pretty angry at the higher-ups' kind of backroom dealings. So some of this manga is its author venting their frustrations at the time, but at the same time the author does make it clear that the protagonists are doing something wrong, and you shouldn't take their words at face value. Amongst the violence, there's a bit of comedy to lighten the mood, which stops the violence from becoming exhausting. Understandably, these days, with so much political violence going on, I can understand if you want to avoid this manga, thinking that it somewhat glorifies such things. But I recommend reading a couple of chapters to see what you think first, and then make your decision from there. This series sadly only got an official French and Italian translation, so you have to look online for a fan translation if you want the English.
Number 3. My next one is another really obscure series, Record of the Fallen Vampire. Thousands of years ago, the Vampire King was so powerful that they had to try to defeat him, so they sealed his queen away and created a creature known as the Black Swan, which is just a human with extraordinary powers. But every time the Black Swan dies, she reincarnates into another form, well, another person, and then he has to keep fighting the Black Swan while trying to rescue his sealed away queen. And every time the Black Swan reincarnates, she gets more powerful, so he has to find his queen before the Black Swan gets powerful enough to actually kill him. It's a really good story as well, so I do recommend it. It's one of my favourite series. I have all these books on my shelf. It's got lots of twists and turns for a vampire series. It's really good. I recommend this one as well.
So I have another controversial one for you. And please, once again, hear me out. Is it wrong to pick up girls in the dungeon, also known as the Machi? And I don't just mean the main story, but I mean all its spin-offs as well. Now, I know it's had multiple anime seasons, 4 in total so far, and it's had a not-so-good film, a low-budget game, but because of the anime, people aren't giving the manga or the light novels a chance, which is a massive shame. Part of the problem is that the first 2 anime seasons kinda sucked, and many people, my friends included, have no interest in the books because they assume it's going to be some boring cheesecake fest which the series is far from it. Counter to the title of the series, there is some little cheesecake to be found, and instead you get some interesting characters in a very detailed world, which has been heavily thought out, hence all the side stories. As much as I enjoy all the side stories, I must highly recommend the Sword of Toriari series, as this one at times even outshines the main series. It follows Eyes and the rest of the Loki familiar, and unlike Belle's story, which is the path of innocence in a dark world, Eyes' path is filled with death and trauma, and it explains her personality in the main series. If you enjoyed the anime, like series 3 and 4, I implore you to read the mangas. You won't regret it. And for those of you who don't know this series, it's about a world where all the deities came down from the heavens and recruited people to go into dungeons and do all sorts of other stuff. It's very hard to sum up in a few words. Just give a few random chapters of either the two main core series, either the normal Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in Dungeon or the Solitary, and see what you think of it. It is definitely a lot more to the story than the anime gives you in the first two series.
Number 2. So the next one I have for you is a romance series called Devil and Her Love Song, or Akuma to Love Song in the original. One thing I really do like about this one is the story and the artwork, because the art is really nice. So the story is about Maria, a girl who was kicked out of her previous school, which was a religious school, because she's really frank with her words and sharp and honest with everything that she says, and it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. So when she moves to her new school, she's shunned by everybody, but she's really good at singing, and the singing that she does, which was originally choir songs, but she gets two of the boys in that school to like her, and then they slowly get closer, and it's about the romance and how she goes about gaining friends and, you know, developing her social life around the school. So if you're one for sappy romance series, here's one for you.
For our penultimate series, we have Mohon Roji's Bureau of Supernatural Investigation. It's a pretty decent manga about a young magical law enforcer and his assistant who investigates supernatural events and punishes spirits involved based on what magical laws they have broken. An aspect I really liked about this series is that the spirits that are being punished are very rarely evil. There is a moral shade of grey, instead of what you get in too many other series is where the enemies are just mindless evil creatures. So the time I read this, it was quite a breath of fresh air. Interestingly, I had recently heard that this manga had an anime, but I had to go out of my way to find it. It just seems to have just appeared and disappeared into the air, but shoved out the door with little fanfare. And reviews suggest it was average, which is quite sad. At the end of the day, this manga was a bright spark when it came out, but it quickly faded away from public consciousness, which I'm quite sad about, as I think it's quite worth reading, especially if you're into supernatural stories.
And finally, at number 1, we have... So the final one I have for you today is Tagami Bachi Letter B. It's around the main character and his job as a letter B, which is to deliver letters, which every time a person writes a letter, it's like they put their heart into it. So he basically delivers the hearts and messages of people. Because in this world, the world they're in is infested by giant creatures they call Gaiju, which are giant insects with metal exoskeletons. And the only way to defeat them is with special amber and weapons, which the letter B's use. And Lag, the main character, has got a false eye, which is an amber. And his special power is whatever he shoots with his gun, using his amber powers, he can see the memories contained within that. So if he shoots a letter, he can see the memories of the person and the feelings they put into that letter. And the plot is around him trying to find his mentor again, who saved him when he was a child, and his job as delivering letters to everybody, which is delivering the hearts to everyone that he meets. It's really sweet. It's a good series, decent really good action. I do recommend this one. So that is my final series for today.
For my final underappreciated manga, it is Babel, specifically the one done by Unone Noriyoshi, and I apologise if I pronounced the name wrong. Babel is a manga about reversing time to investigate and stop a massive terrorist attack. It is a well thought out manga with good characters and great art. Also, surprisingly, the manga doesn't outstay its welcome, as it wraps up its story within 32 chapters, which seems to be quite rare these days. It surprises me how little known this manga is, and hopefully, by doing this video, more people will take an interest in it. But if you want a bit more knowledge about it, watch our 5-chapter rule episode about this manga. Now, this is the last of my picks of underappreciated manga. If any of our choices have led to you picking up a new manga, please leave a like. If you have any other mangas that you feel underappreciated, please let us know in the comments below. And if you want to discover other not well-known mangas, check out our 5-chapter rule series, which you'll find in our playlists. In it, we use a randomizer to pick out manga, and we read the first 5 chapters and give a review of it. We're currently recording our 2nd season of that, so subscribe if you want a notification when it's ready. But until next time, goodbye.
And there you have it, 20 underappreciated manga series that we all recommend. If you've got this far and you appreciate any of these series, you're free to leave some comments and likes. We appreciate all subscribers and likes and comments here. We'll always reply back if we can. You can catch any of our series like the 5-chapter rule where we review mangas, or you can come join us on our Friday streams. And on that, I won't keep you from just finding the series right now and having a quick read of them, so I'll leave you to that. See you in the next video. Thanks again. Goodbye.